The knife was inches from Ella's throat when she heard the gunshot. One moment, she was pinned against the alley wall, 3 men closing in with violence in their eyes and deaths on their lips. The next, the world exploded into chaos, gunfire, shouting, bodies hitting concrete. She didn't see who fired first. She only saw the man who appeared from the shadows like some dark avenging angel, moving with lethal precision that made trained killers look like amateurs. Dante Russo. The name every person in this city whispered with fear. The Mafia Kingpin who controlled half of Manhattan's underground, whose empire was built on blood and ruthless calculation. The last person who should have stopped to save a woman being hunted in a back alley. But he did stop. And when his cold, dark eyes met hers, assessing, calculating, seeing something she didn't understand, Ella knew with bone-deep certainty that her life had just changed forever. "Get in the car," he said, his voice like gravel and smoke. Not a request. A command. And because 3 bodies lay bleeding at her feet and sirens wailed in the distance, because she had nowhere else to run and no one else to turn to, Ella made a choice that would either save her or destroy her. She got in the car. But to understand how a woman with a master's degree in social work ended up in a Mafia Kingpin's vehicle, fleeing from thugs who wanted her dead, we need to go back. Back to the moment her family proved exactly who they were. Back to the graduation day that should have been her triumph but became her breaking point. Before we dive into this story, if you love tales of dangerous men, fierce women, and plot twists that make your heart race, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. The algorithm only shows you what you engage with, so if you want more stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, you know what to do. Subscribe, comment your location, and let's begin. Ella stood in her cap and gown, clutching her diploma with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Around her, graduates embraced their families, posed for photos, celebrated achievements that had taken years to earn. She scanned the crowd for the 10th time, her phone pressed to her ear as it rang and rang. No answer. Again. "You've reached Catherine Monroe. Please leave a message." Her mother's voicemail. The same one she'd been hearing all morning. She tried her father next. Voicemail. Her sister. Voicemail. They weren't coming. They'd promised they would, had said they wouldn't miss this for the world, but Ella should have known better. She always knew better, yet somehow she kept hoping they'd prove her wrong. Ella Monroe? A photographer gestured toward her. "Want a family photo?" "They couldn't make it," Ella said, her voice barely steady. "Just me today." The photographer's expression shifted to pity, which made it so much worse. She posed alone, smiled for a camera that felt like it was documenting her isolation rather than her achievement. When it was over, she walked to her car through a parking lot filled with laughter and celebration she wasn't part of. The call came 20 minutes into her drive home. "Ella, honey." Her mother's voice was breezy, unconcerned. "We're not going to make it." "I know. The ceremony's over." "Oh." A pause. "Well, you understand. Your sister's gallery opening is tonight, and we couldn't miss that. It's a big deal for Victoria." Ella's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "My graduation was a big deal." "Don't be dramatic. Plenty of people get master's degrees. Victoria's art career is actually going somewhere. You work at a nonprofit. It's very nice, but it's not exactly newsworthy." The words landed like punches, each one carefully aimed. Ella had heard variations of this her entire life. Victoria is the talented one. Victoria has real potential. Why can't you be more like your sister? "I help women escape domestic violence," Ella said quietly. "I rebuild lives. I save people." "That's very noble," her mother said in a tone that made nobility sound like a character flaw. "But when are you going to focus on your own life?" "You're 32, Ella. Still single, still living in that tiny apartment, still working for pennies. When are you going to do something that actually matters? This matters to me. Well, her mother said crisply, maybe that's your problem. You've always been so determined to help people who don't want to be helped. Maybe if you focused on your own success instead of everyone else's problems, you'd actually accomplish something. Ella pulled over because she couldn't drive and process this cruelty simultaneously. I just earned a master's degree in social work. I run the intake program for the city's largest domestic violence shelter. How is that not accomplishing something? Oh, Ella. Her mother's sigh was theatrical, practiced. This is exactly why we couldn't come today. You're so sensitive about everything. Always looking for validation, always needing praise. It's exhausting. I wasn't looking for praise. I was looking for my family. We are your family. And families tell each other the truth, even when it hurts. The truth is, you chose a career path that leads nowhere. You could have gone to law school like your father suggested. You could have done something impressive. Instead, you're working with damaged women in a building that probably has rats. Ella closed her eyes. The shelter didn't have rats. It had women who'd fled with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Women who'd been beaten, terrorized, told they were worthless until they believed it. Women Ella helped remember they were human beings who deserved safety and dignity. Women her mother apparently thought weren't worth saving. I have to go, Ella whispered. Fine. Don't forget Victoria's opening next month. Try to dress appropriately this time. And Ella? Maybe consider therapy. This victim mentality isn't healthy. The line went dead. Ella sat in her car on the side of the road, still wearing her cap and gown, holding a diploma that suddenly felt like evidence of her own delusion. She'd spent 6 years, 4 for her bachelor's, 2 for her master's, working full-time and going to school at night, believing that one day her family would see her worth. But they never would. Because in their world, worth was measured in money and status and social media followers. And Ella, who'd chosen to help instead of climb, would always be the disappointing daughter. She drove home to her tiny apartment, hung her diploma on the wall next to her bachelor's degree, both of which she'd earned alone, and made herself a promise. She would never again wait for her family's approval. She would never again measure her worth by their standards. She would build a life that mattered to her, surrounded by people who actually gave a damn. What she didn't know was that this promise would lead her directly into the path of the most dangerous man in Manhattan. And he would change everything. The call came 3 weeks later, at 11 p.m., pulling Ella from the case files she'd been reviewing. Ella, it's Mara. The voice was shaking, terrified. He found me. Ella was on her feet instantly, already grabbing her keys. Mara was one of her clients, a woman who'd fled an abusive husband 6 months ago, relocated to a new neighborhood, changed her name, done everything right. Where are you? Lower East Side. Near the old market. He's following me. He has friends with him. I can't, her voice broke. I can't go back to him. I'd rather die. You're not going to die, and you're not going back. Ella was already in her car, GPS pulling up the route. Stay on the phone with me. Find somewhere public. Don't let them corner you. She drove faster than she should have, her heart hammering. This was the part of her job that never got easier, knowing that men like Mara's husband saw their victims as property, as things to be reclaimed and punished. She found Mara 20 minutes later, huddled in a doorway near a closed bodega, her face pale with terror. But she wasn't alone. 3 men stood nearby, smoking, watching her like predators circling prey. Ella recognized the husband immediately. Travis Chin. She'd seen his photo in Mara's case file, had memorized his face the way she did with all abusers. He was tall, built like a boxer, and wearing an expression of cold rage that made Ella's blood freeze. She parked and got out, positioning herself between Mara and the men. Mara, get in my car. Travis took a step forward. The hell she will. That's my wife. Ex-wife, Ella corrected, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. She has a restraining order. You're violating it right now. Leave, or I call the police. Travis's smile was cruel. Call them. By the time they get here, we'll be long gone. And you? He looked her up and down dismissively. You're nobody. Just another do-gooder who thinks she can save broken women. I don't save anyone, Ella said quietly. I help them save themselves. Mara's already saved. She left you. She built a new life. And you don't get to take that from her. One of Travis's friends laughed. You got a big mouth for someone who's about to get hurt. Ella pulled out her phone. Last chance. Walk away. Travis moved fast, knocking the phone from her hand. It skittered across the pavement, screen cracking. You don't get it, do you? Women like my wife, women like you need to be taught lessons. And I'm really good at teaching. Mara screamed. Ella stepped in front of her, every self-defense class she'd ever taken suddenly feeling inadequate. She was one woman against three men who had violence in their eyes and no fear of consequences. Run, Ella told Mara. Now. But Mara was frozen, terror locking her in place. And Travis was reaching for Ella, his hand closing around her arm with bruising force, dragging her toward the alley. That's when she heard the gunshot. Everything happened in seconds. The gunshot cracked through the night like thunder. Travis released Ella's arm, stumbling backward. His friend spun toward the sound, hands reaching for weapons they didn't have time to draw. A black car had pulled up silently, its engine purring like a predator. The door opened, and a man emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of fluid precision that spoke of violence as second nature. Dante Russo. Ella had seen his face on the news, in whispered conversations at the shelter, in the eyes of women who'd fled men connected to his world. The Mafia Kingpin who controlled Manhattan's underground with an iron fist and no mercy. The man police couldn't touch and criminals feared. He shouldn't have been here. There was no reason for someone like him to be in this neighborhood, on this street, at this exact moment. But he was. And he was looking directly at her. You have 3 seconds, Dante said, his voice like silk over steel. Leave, or die here. Your choice. Travis, who'd faced down cops and judges and restraining orders without flinching, took one look at Dante Russo and went pale. We don't want trouble. You already have it. Dante's gun remained steady, pointed with casual precision. 2 seconds. Travis and his friends ran. Actually ran, disappearing into the night like roaches scattering from light. Silence fell over the street, broken only by Mara's ragged breathing and Ella's hammering heart. Dante holstered his gun and turned his full attention to Ella. Up close, he was even more imposing than his reputation suggested. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that missed nothing, a mouth set in a line that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it never. You're bleeding, he observed. Ella looked down. Her arm was scraped where Travis had grabbed her, blood welling through torn fabric. It's nothing. Nothing gets you killed in this city. He gestured toward his car. Get in. I'm fine. Thank you for whatever that was, but I need to take care of Mara. Mara can go to the shelter you work for. You have bigger problems. Ella's breath caught. How do you know where I work? Dante's expression didn't change. I know everything that happens in my city. Including the fact that Travis Chen works for the Kowalski family. And you just humiliated him in front of his crew. They won't let that slide. I didn't humiliate him. You did. They'll blame you anyway. He opened the car door. So you have 2 choices. Get in, let me take you somewhere safe while this gets handled. Or go home tonight and wake up to men with worse intentions than Travis. Mara grabbed Ella's hand. Go. Please. I'll call the shelter, get picked up. But you can't, her voice broke. He'll kill you if he finds you. And he will find you. Ella looked at this man who shouldn't have saved her, who had no reason to care whether she lived or died, whose world was everything she'd spent her career fighting against. But sirens were wailing in the distance. And Travis's words echoed in her head, women like you need to be taught lessons. 1 hour, Ella said. You explain what's happening, I figure out my next move, then I leave. Dante's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Whatever you need to tell yourself. She got in the car. As they pulled away from the curb, Ella caught sight of her reflection in the window, torn jacket, scraped arm, eyes too wide. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd stumbled into something far beyond her understanding. But what she didn't see yet, what she couldn't know as Dante Russo drove her into the darkness of Manhattan's underworld, was that she'd also just met the man who would teach her what she was truly capable of. And it would shock everyone. The car was expensive. Leather seats, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that announced power before its occupant even spoke. Ella sat stiffly, her hands clasped in her lap, hyper-aware of the man beside her. Dante drove with one hand, his movements economical and precise. He hadn't spoken since they left the alley, but Ella could feel his attention on her like heat, assessing, calculating. Where are we going? She asked, breaking the silence. Somewhere you won't be found. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He glanced at her. What's your name? Ella Monroe. Ella. He tested the name like he was deciding whether it suited her. You work at the Lighthouse Shelter. Been there 4 years. Before that, you worked at a crisis hotline while finishing your master's degree. Your family's Upper East Side, old money, but you live in a rent-controlled apartment in Hell's Kitchen and drive a car that should have died 3 years ago. Ella's blood ran cold. How do you know all that? I told you. I know everything. He turned onto a side street, the buildings growing taller and more imposing. Travis Chen is low-level muscle for the Kowalski organization. They run protection rackets, loan sharking, some trafficking. His wife leaving him made him look weak. You helping her? That made him look weaker. He'll come for you to restore his reputation. So let him. I'll file a police report. Dante laughed, but there was no humor in it. The police won't help you. Half of them are on Kowalski's payroll. The other half don't care about social workers who get themselves into situations they can't handle. I help women escape abuse. That's not a situation. That's my job. Your job just made you a target. He pulled into an underground parking garage, the gate closing behind them with ominous finality. Welcome to mine. He parked and got out, moving around to open her door. Ella stayed in her seat. I didn't ask to be saved. No, Dante agreed. You asked to die protecting a woman you barely know. I simply gave you another option. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. Why would you care? You don't know me. This isn't your problem. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not quite softness, but something close. Because I've seen what men like Travis do to women who get in their way. And you deserve better than becoming another statistic. The words, coming from him, should have felt like manipulation. But they didn't. They felt like truth. Ella got out of the car. Dante led her through the garage to an elevator that required a keycard. They rode up in silence, the tension between them thick enough to taste. When the doors opened, Ella stepped into the most beautiful apartment she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city lights spreading out like stars. Modern furniture, dark wood, artwork that was definitely original. It screamed wealth and power and a life so far removed from her own they might as well have been different species. "This is where you live?" she asked. "One of the places." Dante gestured toward a hallway. "Guest room is second door on the left. Bathroom stocked. Stay as long as you need." "I told you. 1 hour. And I told you, whatever you need to tell yourself." He moved toward a bar cart, poured himself whiskey. "But when you realize leaving here means dying out there, the room will still be available." Ella wanted to argue, to insist she could handle this on her own. But the truth was settling in her bones like ice. Travis wouldn't let this go. The Kowalski family wouldn't let this go. And she had no protection, no resources, no way to fight men who saw violence as business. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Dante took a slow sip of whiskey, his eyes on the city beyond the windows. "Because 10 years ago, I lost someone important to me. A woman who dedicated her life to helping others. Who thought she could change the world one person at a time." His voice went rough. "She was killed by a man whose wife she helped escape. And I wasn't there to stop it." Ella's breath caught. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be smart." He turned to face her fully. "You can't save everyone, Ella. Sometimes you need to let someone save you." The vulnerability in those words, coming from a man who'd built an empire on being untouchable, cracked something open in her chest. "1 night," she said. "I'll stay 1 night. Figure out a plan. Then I go back to my life." Dante's smile was sad and knowing. "Sure. 1 night." But as Ella walked toward the guest room, her body aching and her mind reeling, she suspected they both knew the truth. 1 night would never be enough to untangle what had just begun. Ella didn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed in Dante's guest room, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Travis's face, heard his threats, felt his hand bruising her arm. At 3 a.m., she gave up and went to find water. Dante was still awake, standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves. For the first time, she saw the tattoos that covered his forearms, intricate, beautiful, and undoubtedly marking him as what he was. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning around. "Too much adrenaline." She moved to stand beside him, keeping a careful distance. "You?" "I don't sleep much." They stood in silence, watching the city that never truly rested. Somewhere out there, Mara was safe at the shelter. Somewhere out there, Travis was plotting revenge. Somewhere out there, Ella's family was probably at Victoria's gallery opening, celebrating the daughter who mattered. "Tell me about the woman you lost," Ella said quietly. Dante was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, her name was Isabella. She was a therapist, worked with trauma survivors. She believed people could change, could heal, could become better than their worst moments." His voice was rough with old pain. "She was wrong. Some people can't be saved. They can only be stopped." "What happened?" "She helped a woman leave her husband. The husband was connected, had resources, didn't take the loss well. He found Isabella alone 1 night. Made her an example." Dante's hands clenched into fists. "By the time I found her, it was too late." Ella's heart ached for him, for the woman named Isabella, for the brutal reminder that helping people came with costs. "I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault." He turned to face her. "But learn from them. The work you do? It's necessary. But it's also dangerous. And you've been doing it alone, without protection, without understanding the men you're up against. So what? I just stop helping women escape abuse? Let them stay in dangerous situations because fighting back is too risky? No. You keep fighting. But you let someone watch your back while you do. Someone like you? Someone like me. Ella studied his face, this man who controlled an empire built on violence but spoke about protecting women with something close to reverence. You're asking me to trust a crime boss. I'm asking you to trust the man who saved your life tonight. Dante stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. I'm asking you to see past the reputation and recognize that some of us, we're not as different as you think. We're completely different. Are we? His voice dropped lower. You fight for women everyone else has given up on. You risk your safety, your reputation, your relationships with your family because you believe in something bigger than yourself. How is that different from what I do? You run a criminal empire. I protect people the law doesn't care about. I provide safety in neighborhoods the police ignore. I stop men like Travis from hurting women, because the system sure as hell won't. His eyes burned with intensity. So tell me, Ella Monroe, which one of us is actually changing lives? The question hit harder than it should have. Because he was right, she'd seen it in her work. Women who couldn't go to the police because they didn't trust the system. Neighborhoods where calling 911 meant waiting hours for help that might never come. A justice system that failed more people than it saved. This is insane, she whispered. I can't, I work with victims. I can't be associated with someone like you. You already are. Dante's voice was gentle but unyielding. The moment I saved you, the moment you got in my car, you became associated with me. And now you have a choice, fight it and put yourself at risk, or accept it and let me help you finish what you started. What I started? Bringing down the Kowalski family. He smiled, and this time it was real, dangerous, and thrilling. Because if we're going to keep you alive, we need to make sure Travis and everyone connected to him understands what happens when they threaten someone under my protection. Ella's pulse raced. You're talking about war. I'm talking about justice. Your way didn't work. Try mine. And God help her, standing in that apartment with the city spread out below them and this dangerous man offering to fight her battles, Ella felt something she hadn't felt in years.